So I'm going to tell you about the time that I got charged at close range by a big wild Montana grizz at close range. As you can see from these pictures, I've gotten a lot of elk, and I've brought the elk out of the mountains on my back. Here's a picture of me in the freezing cold boning out an elk in the backcountry, and I'm telling you, my hands were so frozen that I could barely get the meat off the bones. And although I've bow hunted and everything and been back in the backcountry a lot, I've never actually had a grizzly run in as a hunter. There was a counselor at our school, Columbia Falls High, named Dale Lee. And he was a soft-spoken, red-headed guy that was a real kind of a legend in our area for amazing outdoor adventure. Like Dale had done stuff like a solo ascent of Mount St. Nicholas, which requires fording the Middle Fork River and then putting the pack and everything back on, hiking across country through Grizzly country where there is no trail, and then climbing this mountain that needs ropes and it's technical all by himself. So Dale and I became friends because I loved backcountry adventure. We did a lot of cool things like ski Ole Creek and Autumn Trail run cross country in the winter through Trophy Bull elk country, and it was really, really awesome. But Dale had this spot that he wanted to show me that was just insane good fishing. So we drove for miles and miles up a gravel road. And then when we got there, and then once at the trailhead, we had to pack not only our backpacks full of our camping equipment, but we each had to take an inflatable boat. We put on our backpack because we would stay overnight, and I packed in a two-man raft. And Dale packed in this thing that he had purchased, which it was before the time of stand-up paddleboards, but it was a blow-up thing that was kind of like a stand-up paddleboard, and it had rods underneath to stiffen it. And so we hiked 6 miles, and I had this heavy two-man raft on my pack. Once we got there, we blew up everything and got everything ready, and then we had to paddle about another 3, maybe 3.5 miles to the place where it was good fishing. We got everything all blown up, and we headed out. Now the first thing that happened is Dale flipped over on that little paddleboard thing. And then he dried himself off, we got reconfigured and kept going, and he fell off again. It was really super tippy. Meanwhile, I'm laboring with this two-man raft, which wasn't too bad, but after hiking 6 miles, the 3-mile paddle seemed like a long ways. We got there around evening, and we began casting out our big spoons into where the stream came in. The fishing was incredible. The first cast, immediately, I had a big one. I got it in. It was about a 2.5-pound Dolly Varden. We continued fishing, and without exaggeration, every single cast yielded about a 3-pound trout. So we had us a really good time and threw some back, kept a couple. Dale wanted to eat a few against my objection, because I said, Dale, we're off the grid, we're in an area nobody knows we're here, and this has got to be prime grizz country, and you're going to make a big smelly fish fry to attract every grizzly within 10 miles to us? Dale said, yeah, that'll be okay. So we built a fire and we had a big old fish fry, and each of us ate a big trout or 2, and then wanting to dispose of the smell, we put everything in the fire itself, and so the fish fumes must have rose to every grizzly within a 10-mile radius. Then it got dark, and as it got dark, it got windy. It was kind of a warm, windy night, and there I am, camped without a tent in prime grizz country. Known we've just done what would be similar to sharks as chumming the water with blood and tuna. And I'm sleeping, and it's a windy night, and it's just a spooky windy night. And I'm thinking, surely there must be grizzlies coming for us. And it was really hard to sleep, honestly. Well, we finally got through the tense night. But the problem was there was a stiff wind coming our direction now. Maybe like 25 miles an hour, I'm guessing, possibly 30, maybe gusts up to 40. And it was creating whitecaps on the water that were this big. So we had to really hug the shore because, as you know, Dale had already flipped over 2 or 3 times on that little thing. Now, I was okay on the raft, but it was hard rowing against a stiff wind. And once again, we really had to hug the shore so we wouldn't capsize and so we could make a little progress. After about maybe 3/4 of a mile or a mile of this, rowing that 2-man raft, which was a cumbersome brute, against that stiff wind, I said, Dale, I gotta switch, man. I said, I don't think it's a good idea because, you know, I already flipped over 2 or 3 times in this thing and you don't even know what you're doing and now it's wavy. I said, Dale, there's no choice. My arms are giving out. I gotta try that thing. He said, well, okay. So I had just gotten on this tippy little kind of SUP kayak kind of a thing. And I was really trying not to tip over, just paddling to the best of my ability, trying not to tip over. It was super, super tippy. And I look up at about 2 o'clock, and there is a big Montana silverback grizzly that is tearing up a stump of ants. And even though I was so close to him, like 25 feet, he did not detect I was there because the wind was whistling through his ears as it was mine. So it was the most amazing situation because here I am 25 feet away from something that could easily end my life, and I just get to watch him for a second or two. You could see his whipped, wild, grizzly flesh, the muscles rippling under his skin as he tore up that log and was eating the ants. So for a second or two I contemplated, what in the world am I going to do? And I thought, well, I can't turn like this and go into the trough of the wave. I will surely flip. And we need to keep making progress up the lake. So what I did is I just angled the tip of my canoe maybe out like 10:30 and just tried paddling quietly, thinking I might get by him. But as I got perpendicular to where he was, he perceived I was there, and the second that he did it, he charged with all of his might, an instant charge, coming right to the water's edge and goes, At that time, I was probably only 15, 20 feet away from him, and he had given that mighty charge and that mighty growl, and I knew they were great swimmers and that he could have easily pursued me. But he didn't choose to get wet that day, and I started paddling like those canoes on Gilligan's Island and got out of there. I turned around and shouted, Dale, be careful, there's a grizzly. But my friend Dale said he never actually saw the beast nor heard me. It was windy, the wind was whistling, and it was loud. But after it's done, my thoughts are, after it was complete, I had this amazing, grateful experience of a feeling where I thought, wow, I just got charged by the premium predator on planet Earth to within 15 or 20 feet, and I'm unscathed and I'm fine, and I have an amazing experience to catalog in my mind. It was before bear spray was invented. I didn't have anything like that on me, but I was okay. I believe it was about a 400-pound dark steel silver tip. That means like really dark gray, almost black, and his hump and going back toward his back was arrayed with a beautiful silver. It's a beautiful specimen, and it was a scary but beautiful experience.
Let's try again.
Okay, today guys, I'm going to tell you about how I got charged by a big wild Montana grizz at close range. And although I've bow hunted and everything and been back in the backcountry a lot, I've never actually had a grizzly run in as a hunter. Although my dad told me a story up around Spotted Bear in the early days of the Hungry Horse Reservoir, where a guy went up there to hunt, he made his camp, he got a big elk, he hung the elk up, and a grizzly bear charged him. and he shot the bear as it was coming in to kill him, but it went ahead and killed him. But by the time it had killed him, the bear also died too. And in the spring, when a search party went up there, they found the dead bear, the dead man, and the rotting elk skeleton hanging up there.
It is a good rifle and killed the bear that killed me.
Now I became close friends with a soft-spoken, red-haired school counselor named Dale, who is somewhat of a legend in our Flathead County for extreme sports and mountaineering. Dale and I did a lot of adventures together, but on this particular day he wanted to show me his favorite fishing hole. It was very deep into the Glacier Park backcountry. We had to drive for miles and miles and miles of a gravel road until we even got to the trailhead. And then once at the trailhead, we had to pack not only our backpacks full of our camping equipment, but we each had to take an inflatable boat. Dale had 2 boats for the occasion, and we took the one which was a 2-man raft, and the other which was a specialty kayak that he had purchased that was a blow-up kayak that had some rods that you stuck in it, and you actually sat on top of rather than inside of the kayak. So we get these heavy packs on. This is my North Face Moraine pack I bought when I was 12, and it's been with me on several continents. And we hike the 6 miles to the head of the lake, which itself is very remote. Then we get our packs off, take the boats out, and blow up the raft and the kayak. Dale wants me to use the raft, so I get in that raft and we paddle and paddle, and Dale gets on the kayak that I don't think he'd ever really used before. And after just a little ways, he fell right off of it into the cold water. He got himself gathered up again and kept going, and after a little ways, fell off again. And I believe before we made it the 4 miles into the head of the lake that he fell off even another time, if my memory serves me correctly. Anyway, long story short, we paddled 4 miles up to the head of the lake. Now we are at an extreme backcountry place where few people have ever been. We get our fishing gear out and start to fish, and every single cast we're catching nice big dolly varden. We also call them bull trout. And we caught a mess of fish, built a fire, and had us a nice fish fry. Then Dale says, well, we'll get camp set up and we'll go ahead and sleep here. I said, Dale, I am very uneasy about sleeping here. The Grizz of Glacier do not have a robust elk population to be feeding on like in Yellowstone. They really got a scrap for their food supply, and 2 guys in their prime smelling like fish could be really a worthwhile temptation. I said, Dale, I'm very uneasy about this. This is like the heart of Grizzly country. And every Grizz within a 3 or 4 mile radius is going to smell that fish fry that we just had. And there we are. And they could be coming running. Dale said, man, I've done it before by myself. I don't think we have any other option. So we got the scent of the fish disposed of the best way we could by burning it in the fire. Got ourselves cleaned up to try to erase some of that odorous scent. And then we settled down in among the trees. Now it got very windy that night. And the trees are making these weird noises like, and in my mind I'm just thinking night of the grizzlies, and I'm thinking, whoa, we are in perfect Grizz habitat, and they could be just moving through this warm windy night coming to get us. And it was, to be honest, I didn't sleep real good. We got up the next morning, and the wind had turned the lake into just a froth of fairly high whitecaps, 2 or 3 feet high. Took a couple casts, got a couple more fish, and then we thought, man, we better get out of here while we can. If this wind gets any worse, we could be stranded back in here. So we packed up our stuff and headed out against that strong wind with the whitecaps splashing at us. And because the whitecaps were so strong, we had to really hug the edge and just go and just one row after another until I'm just exhausted. And finally, after about a mile, we stopped to take a breather, and I said, Dale, I gotta try that kayak. I can't do this no more. I am just exhausted. He said, well, you've already seen me fall off of this thing 2 or 3 times. Are you sure you want to do it? I said, I've got to. I can't paddle this rubber raft against this wind anymore. And so he said, all right, well, give it a try. So I strap my backpack onto the thing and I get myself on it. And I'm really trying not to tip over because it is really tippy, especially in the wind. Now, out at all away from the shore, it's like 2 or 3 feet whitecaps. So we're hugging the edge, like within 20 feet, maybe even just 15 or 10 feet. And we're hugging the edge because the whitecaps are not as formidable. The level of wind and whitecap was somewhat dangerous, and this little kayak thing was really super tippy. So everything in me was focused on trying not to tip over as I inched my way up the side of this lake. My concentration breaks for just a second. I look out of the corner of my eye, and to my utter astonishment, I see a dark steel gray, almost black, silver-tip grizzly in the prime of his life, ripped, tearing up this somewhat rotten log and eating the ants. And it was a beautiful specimen. You could see the muscles rippling under that silver-tip fur as he tore it up. And he was only 40 feet away, 20 feet of water, 20 feet of land away from my position at about 2 o'clock. And so I thought, whoa, I am in extreme danger here. What am I going to do? And I thought, I can't turn my boat parallel because I would be in the trough of the waves and I'd tip over for sure. So I thought all I can really do is head my boat at about 11 o'clock and try to increase the distance between he and I just a little bit. Trying to be really quiet, I turn my boat just a little bit, and then I take a couple of really quiet, purposeful strokes, and after about 2, I look up, and he perceived I was there, and in an instant, without looking at me, without blinking, without thinking, he just charged with all of his might. I'd never seen something so lightning fast in all my life. It was that fast, and he was at the water's edge, and I knew they're great swimmers and he could come after me, but he didn't feel like getting wet that day. And with a mighty lunge, his pan-faced head and his bared teeth came toward me, and he goes, "Argh!" I didn't waste a split second with no deer in the headlights stuff. I gave mighty heaves of that kayak as if my life depended on it, and maybe it could have until I knew I was out of harm's way. Now the bear that charged me did not have to stop. And around the same time frame, there was a guy fly fishing in the North Fork River, and a grizz came after him and didn't stop at the water's edge, but continued to pursue him, even though he was up to his waders in swift water, and he had to release himself into the current and go downstream for 125 yards as the bear continued to chase him. I can't really remember the outcome of that story, but I believe he broke a bone in the pursuit and may have lived. Now, somebody who's an expert at grizzly bears asked me later, were his ears laid back or were they vertical? And to be honest, I was too busy crapping my pants to figure out what his ears were doing. But if I had money to bet, I would have thought his ears were out vertical, because when their ears are laid back, it means they're really coming. Sometimes the ear being vertical, I've been told, can mean a bluff charge. But it sure didn't look like a bluff charge. To me, it looked like a mighty beast who knew that he was the undisputed top of the food chain, and that's just what he did if you disturbed him. And then I stopped and turned around toward my friend. Dale, there's a grizzly back there. And he was a good bit behind me because the raft was much slower than the kayak. He may have been a block or so behind me. But Dale heard me shouting about something, and he didn't actually see the bear. Maybe it had decided to go off. But as I'm sitting there on the water of that beautiful mountain lake and the adrenaline is settling down, I'm thinking, wow, I'm one of the only people I've ever heard of who have been charged at this close proximity and lived to tell about it and didn't even have a scratch. And so I was feeling pretty grateful and pretty amazed, and in a grateful spirit I'm thinking, wow, this is pretty amazing. Now I'm going to finish my program here with some footage of a baby grizzly that we took a couple of years ago. We were working hard like we do at Huckland, and then we took Mary's sister Cherry, who'd been working with us, up to see Going to the Sun Road. And we prayed that it'd be a good day, and boy was it, because we saw a baby grizzly right off the side of Going to the Sun Road, and here's the footage of that. Wow, it's a baby grizzly bear.
It's a baby grizzly bear. Where's the mom? I don't know.
Wow, right to the side here, baby grizzly bear. Look at him do his thing.
No, wait, it's a baby bear. It's a grizzly baby bear. I'm on a grizzly then. Oh, okay, brown one.
The silver tip, it's probably about, oh, look, he's smiling for me.
Look at him. Hey, zoom, a big one.
Oh, wow. Thank you, Lord. So anyway, friends, I hope you enjoyed this story. Like the video, subscribe to my channel, and share it with your friends. And if you come to Montana, go up around the Mini Glacier Lodge. Maybe hike to Grinnell Glacier, Grinnell Lake. Especially in the fall, there's grizzlies and bear activity all over there. Now, sometimes the trails are closed because of such, but that's the best place, which isn't miles from nowhere like we were at, that I know of, that you can view the beautiful Glacier Park grizzlies.